All right, now we'll move on to some other types of on-road bikeways, highlighted by separated bike lanes that are becoming pretty popular. Separated bike lanes, several different names over the years, cycle tracks and a couple of others, protected bike lanes. This basically means that you have a bike lane in a roadway that has some sort of physical separation or protection. It's a lot like a side path, except a side path is used by both bike and pedestrian, whereas a separated bike lane is strictly for bikes. These have been used heavily in larger, denser cities, some of those NACTO cities, where they have put in physical barriers that range from parked cars to raised medians to a bunch of different things, planters and so on. There are guides. The Federal Highway Administration has a guide on designing these, and NACTO does a good job as well. The issue with these is that intersection design is very, very important. If you're in a dense urban area where cars from side streets are accustomed to stopping at the stop line before the crosswalk because of pedestrian traffic or because of other reasons, then a separated bike lane should be fine. You should not have problems with cars coming out into the separated bike lane before turning. But in other places, such as more rural areas or more suburban type locations, it could be a big problem at intersections. There are ways to do intersections with these, and the guides will show you how to do that. So I guess on that note, I would say that if you are in a dense urban area, this certainly can be done and is a great treatment. But in less dense areas, if you don't have the intersection issues alleviated, resolved, treated in some other ways, then watch out. This could be problematic to some degree. Shared lane markings is another treatment, and really it's, or sharrows, and this is really considered somewhat of a backup treatment. It can be used on very quiet residential roads, lower speed roads, and so on. But this is not meant for higher speed roads. This does not add to comfort all that much. It's meant as really as kind of a backup or in special lower speed cases. If there's not a room to install bike lanes, sharrows might be the only thing that you can do. If you do add sharrows, they are typically installed in the middle of the traffic lane here in Florida. Other parts of the country, they can be placed a little bit closer to the curb, but they deliver a couple of messages. If there's on-road parking, these can help bring cyclists away from the doors opening up on parked cars, away from what would be called dooring crashes. And if you're a motorist, this tells you that this is a road, this is a lane that will be shared with cyclists fairly commonly. So again, this is one tool in the toolbox, but don't make the mistake of using this in a place where they're not enough of an accommodation and where buffered bike lanes or some other treatment would be better. Here's one that's more relevant to Illinois than Florida, at least from what I've seen in my few months here so far. Very often you have very wide residential streets that allow people to park their car on either side of the road. But in reality, you get very, very low parking occupancy along these roads. In these cases, what I have seen in some towns is that if you try to forbid parking from one side of the road to provide the room you need to install bike lanes, people will freak out. You know, they want to be able to have their company come over and park on their side of the road. So politically, if you come into that situation, then you can install what essentially is like urban shoulders. You just stripe a shoulder where the occasional parked car can park in that area, feel more secure. A bicyclist may be in that space, may go around the car, just as they would if there wasn't any striping. And it will slow down traffic to some degree, especially the high-end speeders on that residential roadway. Many times I've seen roads like this where you have a sign, slow down, drive 25, save our kids. This is one way of passive traffic calming, to slow down that traffic and at the same time have cyclists feel a little more secure biking in that pseudo shoulder. This is not an official treatment. It's just an application of that flexible bike route sign. Paved shoulders, another treatment that's more rural. Some of the busier rural roads. The amount of width for that paved shoulder should vary according to the speed of the traffic, whether you have a lot of trucks, the amount of the traffic. It does have advantages not just for bicyclists, but also for road maintenance as well, since it's the edges of the roads that tend to crumble. So if you don't have a shoulder and the edges of the road start to crumble, that means your traffic lane is being impacted. So this has an advantage not only for cyclists, but for roads as well. Rumble strips are a treatment that's used to notify motorists when they start drifting off the road, but these can be really problematic for paved shoulders if they're designed incorrectly. If you do add rumble strips, there should be at least 3 or 4 feet to the right of the rumbles that are free of rumble strips that cyclists can go into.